Hi everyone, I'm Parag with Webgility. This video is being recorded as part of our series called Beat It. I'm talking to entrepreneurs and experts in retail on how they're beating COVID-19. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Trevor McCandless. He's the founder and CEO of Fusion CPA. He's got over 15 years of experience in finance and taxes. He's an amazing entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, and he likes to think about financial numbers very deeply. So he helps a lot of folks find results in their everyday transactions. So please welcome Trevor.
Like a clap right now?
Hey, yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you for being with us. Would love to hear a little bit more about Fusion CPA and your background, Trevor.
Yeah. So we've got 12 CPAs. We're here in Atlanta, Georgia. We focus really on three core services with our clients, and we've got a ton in the retail, multi-location to retail, e-commerce space. But we focus on tax compliance, tax planning, outsourced accounting, outsourced controllers, bookkeeping, that kind of work, and then outsourced CFO work as well.
Excellent. So being based in Atlanta and Georgia, I know they're going through a very different sort of sequence of events than most of the other parts of the country. Do you serve a lot of local clients, or are your clients kind of all over the country? And are you seeing kind of a different impact across the U.S.?
It's an interesting way to put it, an interesting sequence of events. Yeah, the governor announced, I guess, that we're opening some companies tomorrow. I guess tomorrow's Friday, and then on Monday as well. We're the entrepreneurial community for the most part. I think we're staying as is, and just kind of continuing to operate remotely. Our clients are all over the place. Really, they're all over the place. We got obviously a ton here in the Georgia area. But yeah, the effect, it varies by state. I was on the phone with one of our clients in the e-commerce space right before this, and he ships out and sells model kind of planes and model boats. And so some of the conversations that we're having is, well, for him, the CARES Act just came out. Have you dove deep into the Paycheck Protection Plan and EIDL?
Yes. In fact, that's one of the topics I want to dive into today. It sounds like the House is, I don't know if they're already voted or they're going to be voting this afternoon to pass the additional, $450 billion?
I thought they had passed it, but there could be another voting process for all I know. It's everything has been changing, by the minute, by the day. The bill comes out and everybody is scrambling to interpret over the weekend, what has just come out, with very little guidance, and it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And then they put out a little interim guidance, and then our calculations changed, and then they put out a little bit of more interim guidance, our calculations changed.
Sure.
So the accounting community is losing it.
Sounds like despite the push on personal taxes and that delayed timeline, sounds like you're working double overtime.
Oh, double overtime, triple overtime, easy. We actually, last week was April 15th. So in honor of April 15th, I took a day off. Yeah, I had a couple more drinks than I normally would. But we're working triple overtime, and fortunately with the Triple P program, I think we got it down now. We've got the calculation down. There's a little bit of nuances still going on with partnerships and self-employed individuals, but I think we're on a good spot at this moment. We've been trying to be as much of ahead of it and thought leaders in the industry as much as we possibly can. And that's actually one of the piece of advice that I'm trying to give as many of our clients as possible is network with everybody you possibly can in your industry. We're all coming at it with different perspectives of how to just get operations done, how we're adding value to our clients and customers, and heck, even kind of expanding on our current products and processes. So I'm trying to say, if you don't have a mastermind group, find one.
Sure,
and reach
sure. Yeah,
out
that's great
as
advice.
many calls as you possibly can. Yeah, I was just on another call probably with 20 other CPAs, all Georgia CPAs, at about noon today. And we had kind of like a working lunch of, what we're seeing. And it's kind of fun debate that we all have.
Yeah,
I tend
yeah.
to,
And
I don't know if I answered your question or
no, no,
not.
no. That's absolutely right. I guess I am curious as you since you're highlighting PPP, is that sort of the bulk of your work at this point, or are you also seeing retailers maybe prioritize things a little differently? Because I'm sure a lot of them have either already gone through some cost cutting measures or are really starting to dig into their finances to find ways to really overcome the downturn.
Yeah, so like March 10th always stands out to me as the day that COVID slapped us all in the face. Shortly thereafter, I think I put out a video called the three forces of agile execution in a downturn, right? Of understanding our metrics, our leading indicators, if we need to make moves and kind of do a reset, right? If revenues drop 20%, we're taking a look at our fixed maybe labor costs, and if revenues continue to dive, if they are diving, for some they're not diving, by 20%, 40%, we need to make decisions very quickly about adjusting any fixed costs we might have and having open kind of real conversations with leadership as well as all the employees, because it really is, everybody's saying we're going through this together, but it's so true. It rings true every single time it's said. And so it's kind of a lot of transparency with employees, partners, vendors, the whole nine. I think it's just worthwhile.
Yeah, yeah, diving into kind of all of the line items, especially the big ones in terms of payroll and vendors to figure out where to make the cuts. You do spend, I think, a lot of, from what I understand, a lot of your clients are retailers, and you mentioned some are seeing the downturn.
Yeah.
Overall, across your kind of customer base, would you say that the sort of the declines are being balanced by the upswings, or do you feel like there's a different pattern there?
I don't think they're being balanced by the upswings. I
Okay.
think the declines are the declines, and we're hoping that they're short term in nature. And so it's kind of, what can we do now, right? It's let's get lean, operate lean, but also I think there's reason to be optimistic as well. I mean, this is a time I think we're all, from a personal family standpoint, we're kind of getting out, maybe walking around the neighborhood as well, and we're actually kind of very grateful for that. It's kind of an interesting dynamic going on there, but it's also the same kind of thing that we can do with our businesses, right? In a time that we can look internally at our processes, from an operation standpoint, it can be, our training processes. We have a lot of clients that do that in a very ad hoc way, in a very
That's right.
hands-on
That's
way,
right.
which is fantastic. But we can still hire people while obviously doing remote, and we can develop processes from day one of training all through day 30 to day 60, and we can document that now if we're looking for things to spend our time on. But then it's also, another thing when we're seeing, because the point of the question was, are we seeing, the downturns and upturns kind of evening out? I think it's a doubling down of marketing efforts as well, and
Mm.
analyzing our markets. It can be as simple as our marketing newsletter that we're working on. Like, when's the last time you truly segmented that database, by industry, by customer type, by buyer persona? So talking through just the different kind of marketing moves that can be made. And I'm curious, have you ever heard of a book called EOS Traction
No,
by
no, I haven't.
Gina Wickman?
Okay.
Fantastic book. We actually send a copy of that book to all of our new clients, so we can kind of talk the same language. But we use the framework of Traction when we're doing a lot of our management consulting around these three forces, right? Of operations, sales and marketing, and finance. And so, yeah, it's a time to look internally, and we can beat all of our numbers up and beat our processes up in each of our departments, and see if we can't make them better. So I think it's kind of, I'm optimistic about that.
Sure, sure.
I get pumped about being able to address and it can be sometimes the elephant in the room, right? Of is, do we have the right people in the right seats? Are our marketing efforts aligned? Do we have KPIs and scorecards that we're monitoring on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis to achieve our 12-month goal or 36-month goal? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think, in several of the interviews, something that's really stood out to me is, the creativity that really helps entrepreneurs get off the ground is what really comes to light during these challenging times, because they really just find ways to trim the expenses, find creative ways to just optimize. In fact, I spoke to a large retailer, well, I guess they're a small business, but $10 million plus retailer across multiple channels. And they're using this downturn to actually invest in a rebrand and finding new demographics that they can target. And I think what the struggle really is I would say it's that mindset, right? Which is why we, our campaign's all about beating it, because it's not, you first have to really get over that mental block and the shock factor of what's happened in the economy. But there are really a lot of, I guess, silver linings out there, assuming, of course, that, number one, you've got your team and everyone's in really good health. And then second, as a business owner, you have a strong sense of your sort of finances, your fundamentals, so you can start to think longer term and actually try to capitalize on the moment. One challenge, though, I think is really for those that have brick and mortar locations. Have you seen, do you have like retailers with physical locations, and how are they kind of managing this crisis?
It's when those ones that are kind of stuck are the restaurants. Obviously you can do your takeout and to go, but it's much more hard for them to diversify and bring other revenue sources in. I think a lot of our client base, it's kind of, we just eat, drink, and live this, is we're diversified and selling online, right? All of our clients are, but we've got one client, 15 location company selling hair extensions, right? The walk-in, fortunately they have a ton of online business, but they're probably in 8 different states, and that walk-in business is obviously gone, and people aren't buying as many hair extensions right now.
Yeah.
So, but that's where this triple P loan, we're able to have the conversation there, is like, okay, hopefully, they're giving us 10 weeks of cash. We have an 8-week forgiveness period calculation, but we're getting 10 weeks of cash that can hopefully kind of stem this a little bit. As we all hope this kind of curve flattens, and we can kind of hope to get back to operations at some point. But
one thing that you said, diversification, is another keyword that theme that stands out, because the folks that are diversified across different channels have a lot more resilience. Curious, and I don't know if you work with clients at sort of a channel level, but are you seeing any kind of insights from your retail and e-commerce multi-channel customers on clients on how different channels are performing? Any categories that stand out to you?
That hasn't come up nearly as much, honestly.
Okay.
The multi-channel, the conversation, as I was, I tend to ramble, that I was having earlier with our client that sells these model, planes and ships, our conversation totally went to his supply chain, that, his importers are based out of Illinois and California, and of course they're non-essential, right? And so they can't ship the goods, while his distributor is in Connecticut. And so while he has orders on hold and pending through FBA, Amazon, or just, orders he's managing himself out of his warehouse, fortunately his distributor out of Connecticut has plenty of inventory at the moment, right? And so he just got another truckload in yesterday, and so he's managing the warehouse with his small team, but then And also we get into another side of this conversation of the bill, in that everything that's been introduced is some of his warehouse people, while he hasn't laid them off, what if they go and try to apply for unemployment, and unemployment is up to maybe $900 a week? They can make more in unemployment than they would working for him.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
this is an interesting thing and we're having that same kind of discussion with some of the restaurant clients that we have. Restaurants are not a focus of ours, but we have a lot of serial entrepreneurs as clients, and they sometimes will open a couple of restaurants or
That's
bars
right.
up, and that just is what it is. But that's an interesting little dynamic that is also going on while we're having the funding. Small proportion of our clients have gotten that triple P loan, because I think you probably saw the stats, maybe 6 to 7% of small businesses out there got funding. So hopefully this next round of cash gets down to small businesses.
Yeah, I was fascinated to see some of the numbers and how I guess poorly executed the original program was, but nonetheless the money got out there, and I'm excited that whichever side of the political spectrum you lean on, it's only a good thing that we have more money out there to support small businesses. The effect you just pointed out is a fascinating one in terms of, unemployment benefits being greater than what you might make on the job, especially for some of those associates. Do you have some ideas on how businesses are tackling that?
Well, you hope there's a big loyalty factor, right? That
Right.
that your employees, if you're in that position, are faithful to you and want to help and kind of be in this together, beat it together, versus sitting on a couch and collecting an unemployment check.
That's
So
right.
that's
Yeah.
that's what the hope is. And a lot of employees, at a lot of companies, not just our clients, have been with these companies for a while, and they want to get to work. It's you can only watch so much Netflix, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Hopefully we're working for companies that have a great culture and that we enjoy the people that we're working with, and it's not so much like work, right? There's obviously monotonous tasks that we all have, but we want to like the people that we're working with. So that's what we're banking on. That's what's going to come into play, and we're not going to have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, yeah, and loyalty is definitely key. Although certainly for businesses that have maybe already done the layoffs, it's a very tricky time when you're gonna you need to obviously bring those folks back or save some of that payroll in order to get that forgiveness component of PPP. But then you have folks that are maybe off your payroll that are able to enjoy, I guess, a greater salary for not working, which is just just a crazy dynamic. Like you said, just so much is changing so
Yeah,
quickly. It's hard to sort of figure out.
right. And at least in Georgia, I think of a potential $900 check that someone might get, 300 is from the state and 600, I think, is from Fed. And I don't think back in the economic stimulus bill that was passed in the 2008-9 years, I don't think there was a federal component to that. And so I think that's really what's thrown everybody in a loop here, is that the state unemployment of itself is barely anything, right? But
Right.
when you throw in the federal piece, that's what's unique about this scenario.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess seems like you've seen this story one time before. I'm curious, as now you sort of look ahead. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but looking ahead into, especially from what you're hearing with your clients, um, uh, you have a sense of timeline when you think business might get somewhat restored? Do you see some trends in terms of permanent change in consumer behavior that's impacting your customers? Let's talk a little bit about the future.
Yeah. So again, I think I'm optimistic, but I don't think that anything is going to change drastically back to normal until there's a vaccine, right? Conferences, travel is a huge differentiator in growing business, making partnerships and connections with potential customers. That's huge. And until travel and conferences, I had to cancel maybe like 8 conferences I was going to go to this year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just those casual kind of conversations you have over a beer or something like that after the conference hall exhibit hall day is done. I love this, and but that's going to slow down pipelines, and so until that is there, I don't think we're 100% back to normal, the vaccine. So it's kind of adapting as much as we possibly can in the meantime. I think in our client base, I think the way that our clients operate, and this is, part of us just having conversations and doing proper management and business planning, is that we're diversified on how we're bringing in cash, and how we're marketing. And so it's not all just face-to-face, person-to-person. So, timeline is harder to say, but percentage of revenues, I think it might, until we get there, 60% to 80%, I think might be that operational kind of numerical kind of, unless you're in maybe the toy business, right?
Right.
If you can see it, I've got a Lego set back here. My wife and I
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of a Lego tree.
Yeah, I have a 2-year-old and she's already into it. So yeah, definitely lots of toys. The toys are filling up.
But yeah, I think there's going to be, it's just a reduced kind of revenue cycle until that comes about. And, I wish I had that crystal ball of when that vaccine would come out. But I think, business still has to happen. After that, if we think of it as March 10th, we had a week and a half of dead time, right? Where our employees and our families and us, we had to just get food and figure out what we got to do here. But then, I think sales operations are going to continue. We got to do it. People are still sitting around, and we have business to do and progress to make. So, it's fingers crossed, man. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. I think it also speaks, I think, to your entrepreneurial spirit, because by design, we're all kind of, as a fellow entrepreneur, we're all very, very optimistic about the future. I think that's what drives us. And I think it drives the economy ahead, right? Like, this is why small businesses power the US economy. And I'm just delighted that there's more funds coming to the rescue. So at least for the next 2 to 3 months, that these businesses can keep their doors open. I know we spend a lot of time in these videos talking about some of the positive stories, because that's where we want to focus on. We really want to make sure that everybody understands this. There's also opportunity here. I know times are tough for a lot of retailers whose stores are shut down. And, I've personally talked to some folks who've seen 80+% drop in their revenue because of being in tough sort of retail categories and non-essentials. But the more people are staying home, it's actually coming back. We're coming back to a new life. We're all sort of, I think, adapting to the new normal. And it's fascinating. You mentioned March 10th. I think that was around the time when we were all sort of rushing to the grocery store, not knowing whether, and certainly stocking up on TP apparently, because I don't know, for some reason everybody thought we wouldn't have food and we wouldn't have toilet paper. But yeah, that aftershock's kind of gone, I think, now, and it's fascinating to see how businesses are adapting. I want to end with just sort of some questions, a couple of just questions around, because we do talk and work with a lot of bookkeepers and accountants. How are you managing sort of this time with double, triple overtime of work? And, any advice you would have for accountants and bookkeepers out there who really want to help and who want to find ways to contribute during this time?
How are we managing time? Take a day off, take 2 days. We still have weekends,
That's right. Yeah.
It's a little bit easier for, I'd say, the accountants and bookkeepers that have probably been working virtually for a while. Half of our team had already been working virtually, whether they were in Atlanta or not. And half our team was very in-office oriented. Kind of the tax team really, we like to get together and talk tax. So it's been a little bit more of an adjustment there. Advice is, just take that time off, because burnout is 100% real. and none of us want to get burned out. I mean, it's when I think back of why I even started um, uh, my CPA from Fusion CPA and why I hired as quickly as possible is because I knew if I always tried to wear 8, 10, 12 hats, right, that I was going to burn out and I was going to hate my job. And my clients said that's a disservice to our clients, right? You're not, what do you do when you're burned out? You don't answer emails, you're short, we don't want to operate like that. And so I would just tell them to just keep that in mind,
Yeah.
that walk. Health and exercise is huge, just going for a run in the morning for me, that kind of, it refreshes me. And so
That's right.
I'd say get outside and try to keep that in focus and eat
Awesome.
sardines.
Well, that's a
You said
good
it,
one.
but
Well,
I loaded up on sardines at the grocery store. And my wife was like, we're never going to eat all these things.
well,
Oh, hot
Trevor,
sauce.
awesome. Awesome. Trevor, this has been very insightful. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule. Really insightful tips, I think, for both retailers and for bookkeepers, accountants out there. And I hope everyone stays safe and looking forward to those, those shows and travel being conferences and travel being restored to normalcy, so we can see you in person, Trevor, and grab some of those beers after one of those conferences.
Love it, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, we'll see you.